The moment blood dripped into my eyes from my forehead, the entire world turned red. Shoving, insults, flashbulbs exploding before my eyes. I curled up in the deepest corner of the alley, my back pressed against the wall. The base of the wall was covered in moss, damp and cold, seeping through the fabric of my t-shirt. Someone grabbed my hair and yanked me upward, a searing pain spreading across my scalp. Most of my vision was blurred by blood, and through the haze I saw the crowd part, with her standing behind them, the glow of her phone screen illuminating half her face. Above was the 10,000-word essay she had just posted. The years of invisible bullying I endured in the dorm. The skin on my knee was scraped raw, blood trickling down my calf, seeping into my white sock, sticky and wet. It was the third day after my graduation ceremony. I was supposed to be packing up to go home. The alley wasn't far from the back gate of the school, and I had been cornered here while taking a shortcut. I didn't know the people blocking my way, but she did. She stood in the darkness beyond the streetlight, her lips slightly curled upward, as if admiring a work of art. Behind her were a 9-grid image post and over 100,000 reads. The comment section scrolled with "Go die, shameless, even the poor's blood you suck dry." I lent her $3,000 for living expenses, and she wrote, using charity to maintain a sense of superiority. I stayed up till 3 in the morning helping her revise her resume, and she wrote, emotional blackmail. I took the blame for her academic plagiarism, and she wrote, roommate's long-term emotional abuse. Now she's standing behind the crowd, holding up her phone, filming me with blood all over my face. Blood trickled into the corner of my eye, stinging with pain. I closed my eyes. Car lights swept across the alley entrance, back and forth. Someone shouted, don't beat him to death. She let out a laugh and said, it's fine, there aren't any scars left. Then everything went black. When I opened my eyes again, a fluorescent light tube hung from the ceiling, a dried insect corpse trapped inside. The air smelled of disinfectant mixed with new books. Outside, cicadas chirped deafeningly, and the September sunlight poured through the gap in the half-drawn curtains, landing on an empty bed frame. I sat up. Beside me lay an unopened military training uniform. At my feet were 2 large suitcases, their corners plastered with luggage tags reading, Guangzhou Nanjing. The room number was fixed above the doorframe, white letters on a red background, 312. Memories surged back like seawater after the tide receded, flooding every crevice in an instant. I had lived in this room for 4 years. Serena helped me make the bed when I moved in during the second semester of freshman year. During the winter of sophomore year, I stayed up all night watching over her when she had a high fever. In junior year, she copied my thesis draft from my computer and published it ahead of me. In senior year, she wrote a long post calling me a psychopath. In the end, I was cornered in an alley, and she stood in the shadows watching. I looked down at my hands. Young, knuckles prominent, no calluses on the webbing of my thumb. The mirror reflects a 19-year-old face, white t-shirt, jeans, shoulder-length hair, faint eyebrows, lips pale from clenching my teeth too tightly. I unclench my jaw, take a deep breath, and slowly exhale. The phone on the pillow glows, the date frozen on September 1st. I open the Notes app, create a new folder, name it, Archive. Then I roll over, turn on the voice recorder, and shove the phone under the pillow. Just then, the door swings open. Serena stood at the door, dragging a worn-out suitcase with a broken half-zipper held together by transparent tape. The September sunlight fell on her profile, making her squint for a moment before she broke into a smile. Her teeth were very white, and her eyes curved into crescent moons. Lena, right? I saw your picture in the group chat. She pulled her suitcase inside, her voice soft and gentle. I come from a humble family, so I hope you'll look out for me from now on. The exact same tone. Word for word. Something clenched in my stomach. Cold sweat beaded on my palms, and I had to dig my nails into them to steady myself. From the upper bunk came the rustling of someone turning over. The bed by the window was already made up with a checkered sheet, and a round-faced girl peeked out to look at us. On the bed across from me sat a girl with long, straight black hair, her headphones on, scrolling through her phone with her head bowed, not even looking up. It's only right that we look out for each other as roommates, I said. My voice came out steadier than I expected. Serena's smile froze for a moment, maybe half a second. She leaned her suitcase against the bed, looked up at the pile of things on my top bunk, and softened her voice even more. Lena, I have quite a bit of luggage. That suitcase up there is too heavy, could you help me move it? In my past life, I climbed onto the stool without a second thought to reach for that suitcase. It fell and crushed my ankle, swelling it badly. She cried and said she was sorry, and I told her it was fine, that it wasn't her fault. Later, she wrote in a long post that my roommate even had to look down on me from above just to help me move a suitcase. I just unloaded my things too, they're all over the floor. I shifted to the side, revealing 2 unopened suitcases and a woven bag stuffed with odds and ends by my feet. Let's deal with it together tonight. Serena froze. I saw her fingers twirling the handle of her suitcase, her knuckles turning slightly white. Oh, okay. She laid the suitcase flat, crouched down, and yanked at the zipper. It stuck halfway, so she tugged harder until it finally gave way. Inside, her clothes were neatly folded. A few still had price tags attached, fast fashion pieces from the current season. I looked away and started making my bed. The round-faced girl on the top bunk jumped down and extended her hand with ease. Hi, I'm Mia. Across the room, the girl with straight black hair finally took off one earbud and gave a curt, Vera. Serena, still crouching, looked up at Mia with a smile. I'm Serena. Nice to meet you all. There was a natural fragility in her smile, the lower rims of her eyes were faintly red, as if she could burst into tears at any moment, yet held it back. Mia immediately knelt down to help her organize her clothes. You don't have much stuff, huh? I've got a ton of boxes from home. My mom practically tried to pack the whole house. I turned my back to them as I folded the duvet cover. It was newly issued, carrying a stiff, starched scent. I gave it a firm shake, slipped it over the quilt, and pulled all four corners taut. In my past life, I had washed the same duvet cover for 4 years, eventually tossing it into the dormitory trash bin. Serena took a picture and posted it online with the caption, "Some people leave without even sorting their garbage." I made the bed and headed to the bathroom to wash my face. I twisted the faucet, letting cold water splash onto my face, and stood at the sink for a long while, gripping the counter. In the mirror, my 19-year-old face was glistening wet, lips pressed into a thin line. I closed my eyes, then opened them, reaching up to tuck stray wisps of hair behind my ears. Back in the dorm room, Serena was already chatting with Mia. Sitting on the edge of her bed, her voice was soft, carrying a hint of self-deprecating humor. "All my high school classmates scored better than me on the exams. I'm already grateful just to be here. My dad says girls don't need too much education." Mia's eyes were red-rimmed. "Don't say that. The fact that we're all together is fate." Vera turned a page of her book expressionlessly. Serena's gaze traveled over Mia's shoulder and landed on me. I was facing away from them, placing toiletries on the shelf. Sensing the look, I didn't pause in my movements. She set her cup down on my desk, the base making a soft tap against the surface. I picked up the cup and placed it back on her desk, setting it in the corner near the head of her bed. The motion was smooth and natural, like tidying up my own things as a matter of habit. First night. After the lights went out in the dorm, Mia was still texting her boyfriend, a patch of light from her phone screen spilling down from the upper bunk. Vera's breathing soon became steady. Serena was lying on her side facing the wall, wrapped tightly in her blanket like a quiet cocoon. I lay on my back staring up at the ceiling. The fluorescent light was off, but a thin line of light from the street lamp outside slipped through the gap in the curtains and fell right on my chest. The phone under my pillow blinked a silent red light, the recording app running all night long. At the end of the hallway, someone dragged a suitcase past, the wheels grumbling over the terrazzo floor. I thought of that alley from my past life, the ivy torn halfway off the back wall, revealing the red brick beneath. I thought of the blood dripping from my forehead into my eyes, how the world turned that dark crimson. I thought of Serena standing in the light, smiling, the phone screen illuminating the curve of her lips. I turned over to face the wall, pulling the blanket up to my chin. From inside the pillow came a faint vibration, like a heartbeat. The phone was recording. "Okay. This time, I have 4 years." On the 3rd day of military training, Serena fainted. The early September sun was scorching, and the heat waves on the playground distorted the teaching buildings in the distance into wavy shapes. She was standing 3 rows behind me on the right. I saw her shoulder sway, and then her whole body slowly sank down, like a blade of grass snapped from its root. In my previous life, I was the first to rush over. On the way to the infirmary, she leaned on my shoulder and cried, saying it was low blood sugar, saying her family couldn't afford breakfast. I let her use my meal card for 2 weeks' worth of nutritional meals. Later, in her long post, she wrote, she bought me meals to make me feel indebted. This life, I stood still, turned my head towards the instructor and raised my hand. "Instructor. Someone's passed out." The instructor blew his whistle, and the stretcher from the infirmary arrived quickly. 2 people in white coats lifted Serena onto it. Her face was deathly pale, her lips completely drained of color, and she lay limp on the stretcher. Someone in the nearby formation muttered, "How pitiful." The instructor turned around and barked, "Silence in the ranks." Mia nudged my arm. "Lena, aren't you going to check on her?" "The doctors have it handled," I said. "Let's keep training for now." On the way back to the dorm after the drill, Mia walked quickly, saying she wanted to check on Serena. I followed behind, while Vera strolled leisurely at the rear, her earbud cord dangling from her collar. Pushing open the dorm door, Serena was already lying in bed, a damp towel on her forehead, her lips still pale. Mia sat by the bedside handing her water, which she sipped in small mouthfuls, her lashes misted with moisture. Seeing me come in, she gave a weak smile. "Lena, thanks for calling the doctor today." "It was nothing." I took off my military training jacket and hung it up. "Get some rest first." My phone lit up that night. A WeChat dialog box from Serena popped up. "Lena, things are really tight at home this month. Could you lend me some money for living expenses? I'll pay you back next month for sure." In my previous life, this message was followed by a transfer of 3,000 yuan. She never paid me back, and I never asked. Later, in a long post, she wrote, "My roommate used loans to control me and make me feel indebted. I transferred 500. With the note, emergency funds for roommate. Pay back before month end." Took a screenshot. Reply, "The financial aid application portal opens next week. I already asked the counselor for you. I picked up the forms and left them on your desk." Serena immediately replied with a crying face emoji, followed by a screenshot of her bank balance, only $86.30. 500 isn't enough, Lena. I can't even afford food this month. My dad is hospitalized again, and all the family money has been sent back home. I didn't reply. Instead, I scrolled through the class group files, found the official notice from the Student Financial Aid Center, screenshotted the application process and deadlines, and sent them to her. I also took a photo of the grant application form I had picked up, a blank form spread out on her desk with a pen set beside it. "Fill out the form first. You can also apply for emergency hardship assistance. I asked around for you, you'll need copies of your medical records and proof of poverty." She was quiet for 10 minutes. Then a message popped up, "You're really kind, Lena. But I feel embarrassed to go see the counselor on my own. Could you come with me?" "All right," I replied. "I'll go with you tomorrow at noon." I saved the screenshot. The dormitory lights were still on when Serena suddenly started sobbing, quietly, but loud enough for everyone to hear. Mia shot up from her bed. What's wrong? What happened? Serena pulled the blanket up to cover half her face, her shoulders heaving. My dad's hospitalized again, and I don't even have the fare to go home. Mia immediately pulled out her phone. I'll transfer some to you, okay? I still have some living expenses left. I sat on my bed organizing my military training notes without lifting my head. Before the temporary hardship allowance comes through, the school has an emergency loan channel. I asked the advisor today, interest-free, repaid from next month's scholarship. It'll hit the account in 3 days at the earliest. Serena's sobbing paused for a beat. Mia hesitated, but that's far off water that can't quench present thirst. Vera turned over on the top bunk, her voice muffled. My high school classmate applied and got it within a week. Mia glanced at Serena, then at me, and put her phone down. Serena stopped crying, but she didn't speak anymore either. The next morning, I found she had posted something, an image of a pair of tearful eyes in the dark, captioned, "So even kindness has an expiration date." I took a screenshot. I casually clicked into her profile and scrolled down a bit, and saw she had frequent interactions with a guy from another department named Evan, likes, comments, screenshots of late-night voice calls. The latest one was a photo of bubble tea Evan had posted on his Moments, with her comment, "I want some too," and his reply, "I'll take you this weekend." I saved the screenshots of those 2 comments, created a new folder named Evan, and dragged them in. The night military training ended, Serena had gotten a shade darker. She stood at the dormitory entrance, smiling at everyone. Thank you all for looking after me these past few days. Her gaze finally settled on my face, her lips curling but without any warmth in her eyes. Lena, thank you especially. I gave her a standard, polite, utterly expressionless smile in return. We're roommates. She turned around and went to pack her suitcase. On the day of the midterm calculus exam, Serena sat diagonally behind me. Before the papers were handed out, she leaned over while passing the exam sheets, her breath brushing my ear like a feather. Lena, can you let me see your multiple choice answers later? I didn't study well. In my previous life, I risked getting caught by the proctor and slid my answer sheet half a desk closer to her. After she finished copying, she thanked me 10 times, saying, "Lena, you're the best." Later, during the graduate school interview, when the examiner asked her, "Why is there such a big gap between your advanced math scores and your usual performance?" she cried and said, "My roommate forced me to sit next to her before every exam. She would get upset if I didn't copy." I put on my headphones, pointed to the words, "Work independently," printed at the top of the exam paper, and gave her a smile. "Good luck. The questions aren't hard. Just look down at your own paper." She sat behind me. From the corner of my eye, I could see her pen wasn't moving. Her fingernails dug into the edge of the desk, and the veins on the back of her hand stood out. Immediately after the exam, I went to find the instructor, asked for a blank exam paper, and rewrote my entire problem-solving process from beginning to end. I took a photo and saved it in the academic folder. The teacher thought I was reviewing the exam and gave me 2 extra reference books. When I returned to the dorm, Serena was on the phone on the balcony, her voice very low, but the glass door didn't block sound well. The name Evan drifted in several times, mixed with a few soft laughs. I plugged in my earphones and started organizing my notes. She hung up and came over, carrying a scent of freshly sprayed floral fruity perfume. "Lena, could I borrow your calculus notes? I didn't do too well on the exam and want to review them again." In my past life, I never returned that notebook. Later, Zhangwen posted a photo of my notebook online, captioning it, "My roommate won't even share notes, cold violence is everywhere." "I've compiled an electronic version," I said, opening my laptop. "I'll send you a PDF. You can print it out or view it on your tablet." Serena paused for a moment. "But paper feels nicer to read. PDF allows you to search for keywords and zoom in, it's more convenient." I tapped a few keys on the keyboard. "Sent it to you." She stood there staring at me, her lips moving slightly. I continued typing without looking up. Suddenly my earphones were yanked out. Her voice shot up sharply, trembling with a quiver. "Lena, do you have a problem with me? You've been like this since the semester started. Whenever I ask for help, you always turn me down. I'm struggling financially, and you only transferred 500. When I fainted, you didn't even bother to help." The dorm fell silent in an instant. Mia poked her head out from the bunk, and Vera took off one earpiece. Serena stood by my desk, her eyes rimmed red, her chest heaving. Her voice dropped again, taking on that tearful, aggrieved tone. "I know I don't have it easy. I know I can't compare to any of you. But I've been trying so hard. Couldn't you show just a little understanding?" I opened my phone and played a recording out loud. "Lena, things are really tight at home this month. Could you lend me some living expenses? I'll definitely pay you back next month." Then came the notification sound of a 500 yuan transfer. A screenshot of my text reply, "Emergency for my roommate, will pay back by the end of the month. I left the financial aid form on your desk, and I asked about the procedure for the temporary hardship allowance for you." After the recording finished, the dorm room fell silent for 2 seconds. I turned my phone over and placed it face down on the desk. "I lent you the money, though it's not much. I picked up the financial aid form for you, and I asked about the emergency subsidy process too. The class notes are PDFs, everyone in the class gets the same, so it's not special treatment. When you fainted during military training, I called the instructor and the medic." I paused, my tone as flat as reading a grocery receipt. "Which part of that counts as being inconsiderate?" Mia whispered, "Serena. Lena really asked about a lot of things for you." Vera glanced at me, something complicated in her eyes. It wasn't about taking sides, more like she was reassessing. I put my phone away and went back to doing my homework. That night, the dorm group chat buzzed with messages. Serena sent, "Some people get good grades but refuse to help their roommates. Does that mean they look down on the poor?" She unsent it 3 seconds later. Mia probably didn't see it, she was on a video call with her boyfriend. Vera might have seen it but said nothing. I saved a screenshot and tossed it into my quotes folder. After winter break, Serena stood at the dormitory entrance holding a new suitcase. It was a classic model from a mid-range luxury brand, with silent wheels and a frosted metal handle. I had seen the shoes on her feet in the mall before, 4 figures in price. When she saw me come in, she bent down abruptly and shoved a shoebox under her bed. By the time she straightened up, she had already switched into a pair of worn-out canvas shoes with holes in them. The change was so quick, it was like a reflex. "Lena, how was your winter break?" she asked, beaming. "My dad was hospitalized again, so I spent the whole new year at the hospital." I glanced at the new suitcase by her feet but didn't respond. That must have been tough." She followed my gaze down to the box, her smile freezing for less than a second before she kicked it under the bed. "A gift from a relative." I said I didn't want it, but they insisted. My relatives always love to save face. I unzipped my suitcase and started folding my clothes. "Hey, Lena," she said, leaning in close. She was wearing a new perfume, different from the last one, cloyingly sweeter. "I heard you applied for an internship at Cloud Creative Tech? I want to apply too. Could you let me use your resume as a reference? That draft you helped me revise last time was really useful," the interviewer even praised it. In my past life, I spent 4 hours helping her revise that resume. From the layout to the wording, I polished every line. She got through the first round of screening with that version. On the day of the interview, she said she forgot to bring her portfolio. Crying at the exam hall entrance, she begged me for my USB drive. I gave it to her. After copying the files, she called me her lifesaver Lena. In the end, she got the offer, and I didn't. The HR later told me that during the interview, she mentioned, I contributed to a lot of my roommates' projects. "There are templates online," I said without looking up. "Just fill them in as instructed. Interview experience matters more. Going through the process yourself gives you a better sense of confidence." Serena was silent for a few seconds. Oh. 3 days later, I received an interview notice from Cloud Innovation, scheduled for Friday at 10 in the morning. The night before the interview, I sat at my desk organizing my portfolio, arranging project proposals in chronological order, and checking the version numbers and modification dates of each file. Serena brought over a cup of hot water. "Lena, you're still busy, have some water." She placed the cup by my hand, then leaned in to look at my screen. "Wow, this proposal of yours is really impressive." As she turned, her elbow accidentally knocked over the cup. Half a glass of water spilled onto the documents I had spread out, the ink blotting and several printed sheets completely ruined. "Oh, I'm so sorry, so sorry." She fumbled for tissues and pressed them onto the table. "I was so careless. In my previous life, I panicked all night, turning the place upside down looking for a backup. The print shop was already closed, and the next day I showed up for the interview with dark circles under my eyes, speechless when questioned. This time, I pulled the dry parts from the drawer, tossed the ruined materials into the trash can, and did it all in one swift motion. It's fine. I have a backup." Her hand, wiping the table, froze midair for 2 seconds. I opened the portfolio folder on the USB drive, all the materials were there. Besides the previous version, there was also a new project plan I had just finished this semester, much more mature than the winter break version, with complete data and a closed logical loop. The timestamp showed I had started working on it 2 months ago. On the day of the interview, I arrived an hour early and presented with confidence. On Wednesday, I received the offer email. Serena didn't make the cut. She sat on the bed scrolling through her phone, the screen reflecting the words, "We regret to inform you." Suddenly, she flung her phone onto the bed, covering her face as she sobbed. "I prepared so well. Someone must have badmouthed me behind my back." Mia came out of the restroom. "What's wrong?" Serena choked out, "Yunchuang is only recruiting one intern." Lena got it. During my interview, the HR kept asking me about my relationship with my roommate. Lena must have said something to HR. Mia frowned. "Lena did ask HR for you. Last week, I saw her on WeChat asking HR if they could add one more spot. HR said no, so she didn't tell you." Serena's sobs caught in her throat, halting for a beat. I shut my laptop, poured a glass of warm water, and handed it to Mia without saying a word. As I passed by Serena's bed, her shoulders were tense, her fingers gripping the sheets so tightly the knuckles turned white. I walked past and didn't look back. That night, I opened a new page in my notebook, titled "Jealousy Appears." Beneath it, I recorded the date, the incident, and the numbers of related evidence. The tip of my pen paused on the paper. Outside the window, the streetlight cast a dim yellow glow, with insects circling in its halo. I finished writing, closed the notebook, and pulled open the drawer. Inside lay an application form, filled out at the end of last semester for dormitory safety equipment registration. Under the reason, I wrote, "Repeated instances of personal belongings being displaced and irregularities in electronic device data, applying to install a fixed camera for theft prevention." At first, the advisor said the school generally didn't approve such requests, so I presented a log of 3 anomalous item movements, dates, times, items, and photos, all of which had genuinely occurred. Of course, I knew the real cause of those anomalies better than anyone. The advisor signed off, and after filing with the security office, approval was granted to install a wide-angle camera in the common area, covering the door and hallway, but not the beds or private spaces. It was raining the day it was installed. I linked the surveillance backend account on my phone and saved the first day's test footage. In my past life, I trusted people too easily. In this life, I trust machines. Gavin first appeared in my life through the department's senior student mentorship program. He was a junior, majoring in computer science. He was tall, and when he smiled, there was a nice curve to his eyes. I asked him an algorithm question, and he explained 3 solutions. After finishing the last and optimal one, he went over the derivation process from the beginning again. He then chatted with me for over half an hour about professional directions, even pulling out his sophomore year course notes to show me. They were densely annotated. As he left, he added me on WeChat. Feel free to ask if you have any questions, I replied pretty quickly. I nodded and said okay. He took 2 steps away, then turned back. Lena, you look really nice when you smile. Just now, while explaining the problems, you smiled briefly. You should smile more. The tips of my ears grew warm. Serena quickly noticed Gavin. That day he came to the dorm building to drop off study materials, a stack of printed past exam papers, clipped together with a paperclip, with "Good luck" handwritten on the front page. When I went downstairs to pick them up, Serena was watching the whole thing from the window. That night, she asked me, Lena, who's that? He's a senior from the department, helping me with my studies. Oh, she drew out the syllable. That senior is pretty nice to you, huh? Over the next 2 weeks, Serena started frequently showing up wherever Gavin and I were studying. The window seats on the 3rd floor of the library, the secluded booths in the cafe, the spot near the outlets in the back row of the study room, she always managed to happen to pass by, then sit down naturally and say, Lena's here too, what a coincidence. She smiled at Gavin, revealing her fangs. Hi, senior, I'm Lena's best roommate. She talks about you all the time. I've never mentioned it. Once, Gavin privately sent me a screenshot. Serena had added him on WeChat, and in the chat history she wrote, Senior, actually Lena is quite assertive. She's my closest friend, I know a lot about her. Do you want to hear about it? Gavin replied with a question mark. She's had several boyfriends before, and all the breakups were pretty ugly. She's also been really harsh with her roommates, we're all scared of her. Gavin sent me the screenshot, along with a note, is your roommate misunderstanding something? I stared at the words on the screen for a long time. In my past life, Serena had also added Gavin and sent similar messages. I got angry and argued with her, and she cried, saying, I just worried you'd be fooled. My heart softened, and I forgave her. Later, Gavin gradually distanced himself from me, and Serena kept comforting me, saying she would help win him back. In reality, every month she fed Gavin updates like, Lena's been hanging out with someone else again, and Lena's been acting off lately. I took a deep breath and typed my reply, can you forward me what she said? Gavin got rich. I saved it. Then I confessed, she might have a thing for you. Or rather, she doesn't really want anyone close around me. Just keep your distance. Gavin was silent for a few seconds, then replied with a voice message. His voice was low, with some background noise, like he was outside. Lena, you always sound like you're on guard when you talk. Is your dorm not a safe place? My nose suddenly stung. My fingers hesitated several times before I managed to type, no. It's just that with people, some boundaries need to be drawn. He didn't press further. Talk to me if something's up. Finally, he added, I trust you. That night during the dormitory talk, Mia was going on about the guy she had a crush on in high school, when Vera uncharacteristically muttered, boring. Serena suddenly spoke up softly, I like someone too, but it seems like Lena took him away. The air froze instantly. Mia turned over. Who is it? Serena's voice trembled slightly. That senior from the computer science department. I was planning to take it slow, but Lena's with him every day. Lena, you knew full well I liked him. I sat up, the bed frame letting out a creak. When were you going to tell me you like Gavin? Serena was at a loss for words. When were you going to tell me you like Gavin? I repeated, my voice not loud, but every word clear and distinct. You added him on WeChat 2 weeks ago. In the chat logs, you said I've dated several boyfriends, said I bully my roommate. Is this how you go about liking someone? Mia gasped. Serena, you. Vera clicked her tongue, turning over to face away from everyone. Serena was silent for a long time. So long I thought she had fallen asleep. Then her voice came from under the covers, small as if squeezed out through a crack in the earth, I'm just afraid of being deceived. I didn't speak anymore. I lay down, closed my eyes, and pulled the blanket up to my chin. The phone glowed red under the pillow. In the spring of my sophomore year, Damon sent me a link. He's a friend of mine from the computer science department. A man of few words, when coding, he can go an entire day without speaking. But reliable. Take a look at this. He sent me a message. The IP segment matches our school cafeteria's Wi-Fi. The post was made at 2:17 a.m. The poster likely lives in your building. The post title read, a financially disadvantaged student in a dormitory has been bullied for a long time, while her roommate plays innocent and bites back. The details were detailed. A girl from a small county was isolated by her wealthier roommate. When borrowing living expenses, she was only given 500 yuan, which was touted as mutual aid. She fainted and no one helped. Borrowing notes only got her PDFs with recorded threats, and she was stabbed in the back before an internship interview. The final line, she always stands on moral high ground, smiling, using a seemingly kind approach to drive you insane. There were hundreds of comments in the replies. Some cursed, selling out tragedy for clicks, others lit candle emojis, and some started digging up vague information about suspected Lena, her department, grade, and dormitory building number. I took screenshots of the entire post, from start to finish, and saved them into a new folder along with the IP information and chat records Damon gave me. Then I opened the class group. Serena was sending voice messages inside, her voice thick with tears. "I'm so tired, every day when I go back to the dorm it feels like torture. I don't know what I did wrong." A bunch of people in the group were comforting her, some saying, "Hugs," others saying, "Tell us what's wrong, we'll help you." I typed, "Everyone is welcome to verify the facts. I have all the chat records and transaction receipts here. If you have any questions, feel free to DM me, and I'll send the full screenshots. To avoid disrupting everyone's exam prep, I'll just send one full screenshot first." I sent a screenshot, the 500 yuan transfer record and Serena's "lend me some living expenses" chat box, with the amount, time, and remarks clearly visible, and the recipient's name blurred out. The group chat went silent for 10 seconds. Then someone sent a question mark. Someone retracted a candle emoji they had just posted. Someone at Serena, "Didn't you say you couldn't borrow money?" Serena didn't send any more voice messages. Mia invited me to lunch the next day. The cafeteria was crowded. She sat across from me with her tray, hesitating for a long time as she poked at her rice with her chopsticks. "Lena, about that forum post. You want to ask if it's real?" She nodded. I slid my phone over, opened the archive folder, and scrolled through the timeline for her to see: September's transfer screenshot, October's financial aid application receipt, November's note PDF sending record, December's interview materials backup timestamp, January's Cloud Innovate offer email and her rejection notice, February's Gavin chat log screenshots. Mia looked through each one, her chopsticks resting on the rim of the bowl, motionless for a long time. She lifted her head to look at me, something shattered in her eyes. "Serena, each person lives their own life." I put my phone away. "As long as I mind my own business, that's enough." Mia stayed silent throughout the entire meal. On the way back to the dormitory, she suddenly said, "Lena, you've changed so much. When you first arrived as a freshman, you used to smile so easily." I didn't answer. The flame tree flowers at the dormitory entrance hadn't bloomed yet, and the leaves were a dark, almost black green. Pushing open the dormitory door, I saw Serena sitting in front of the mirror, wearing a white blouse with a khaki skirt. Exactly the same outfit as mine today. She had even tied her hair up at the same height. She saw us come in, adjusted her collar in front of the mirror, and smiled. "Does it look good?" "Just bought it." I didn't say anything. Mia mumbled a vague hum. Serena took a 9-grid photo in front of the mirror and posted it, captioning, "Some people are just lucky, whatever they wear looks like the real deal." In the picture, half of the collar tag was visible, a basic piece from some discount fast fashion brand. The one in my closet was from the flagship store, different cut, fabric, and stitching. I opened the post, took a screenshot, saved it, and created a new subfolder titled Imitative Behavior under Archive. When the notification for graduate school recommendation selection came out in the second half of my junior year, Serena sought out a professor before I did. As I went to the office to submit materials, the professor was frowning at a document. Seeing me enter, he took off his glasses and pinched the bridge of his nose. "Lena, come here." He turned the computer screen toward me, an email Serena had written to the department, in which she accidentally mentioned that the sources of Lena's thesis data are questionable and suggest the department verify them. "I have a copy of your thesis draft here," the professor said, "but this challenge from Serena requires a written explanation from you. The department also needs an official response." I opened my backpack and took out the folder I had prepared earlier. Screenshots of the word timestamps for the first draft of the paper. Email exchanges with my advisor for every communication, from topic selection to proposal to draft revisions, 16 in total, each with a sending date and attachment version number. Scanned copies of the original lab data logbook, 1 page per day, recorded continuously for 4 months, with handwritten corrections and signatures in between. I also added one more thing, a course paper submitted by Serena in the first semester of her junior year, whose core framework closely overlapped with the structure of my first draft, with nearly identical data sources, yet she submitted it a full 2 months after I did. I placed the folder on my advisor's desk. "Professor, this is my complete process record. Also, this course paper was submitted by Serena last semester. You might not have noticed it before." My advisor put on his reading glasses, flipped through a couple of pages, and his expression gradually darkened. When he reached the data comparison page, he tapped his fingers twice on the paper. "You can go back for now. I'll handle this." As I walked out of the office, Serena was standing at the end of the hallway by the fire exit door. When she saw me come out, there was an unmistakable anticipation in her expression. I said nothing, brushing past her, and caught the scent of her new perfume, sweet, cloying floral notes, terribly similar to the one I usually wear. That afternoon, the advisor called her in for a talk. When I got back to the dorm, Mia told me that Serena had cried in the advisor's office for over half an hour, saying, "Lena is ostracizing me and framing me." Vera was applying a face mask, her muffled voice coming from behind the sheet. "Serena, you pull this every time, aren't you tired?" Serena stood at the balcony door, her silhouette frozen. That night, she got into bed without turning on the lights. I lay in bed pretending to be fast asleep, my breathing steady. My phone was tucked under the pillow, the recording button on. Serena's bed was diagonally across from mine, and I could feel her gaze fixed in my direction. It was cold, like the wind seeping through a crack in a winter window. I turned over to face the wall, pushing my phone deeper into the pillow. As dawn approached, she finally fell asleep. I opened my eyes and looked at the course schedule taped to the wall across from me. Today was Wednesday. There were 418 days left until graduation. On the day Serena published her paper, my social media feed was flooded with it. Third author of Core Journal was posted alongside her beaming picture holding the certificate. The comments were all academic genius, goddess, pouring tea for the big shot. I also gave it a like, then opened CNKI and downloaded the full paper. The first time I read it, my fingers began to tremble. The experimental methods, data analysis framework, and core conclusions were almost entirely identical to the draft I had helped her organize in my previous life. More precisely, they were consistent with the core content of that plagiarized paper that led to my graduation crisis in my past life. Back then, she had copied my unpublished draft from my computer and published it first. I was accused of plagiarism, and the investigation dragged on for over half a year. Although I was eventually cleared of suspicion, my guaranteed graduate school spot was long gone. This time she published it early. Perhaps because I had been cold to her, she lost her backing and moved faster instead. I took screenshots of the entire paper from start to finish. I opened the folder of research notes I had started organizing 4 years ago. Inside were the raw data tables I had compiled for her in the second semester of my sophomore year, with clear timestamps, chat records from my junior year with a senior discussing similar research directions, and the key material I only obtained after graduating in my previous life. A comparison showing a high degree of overlap between the original data source of Serena's paper and another published paper. Senior Yvonne was 2 years ahead of me and is now pursuing her master's at the same university. I sent her the compiled materials. Half a day later, she replied with a voice message, with the hum of lab equipment running in the background. Lena, this data framework is almost identical to a project my advisor shot down the year before last. Do you remember? Back in our junior year, I talked to you about this direction, said the data was good but the approach was a dead end. I remembered. When she brought it up, Serena was right there. She casually asked about a few data details, and Yvonne, thinking it was just a curious underclassman, told her everything. I backed up all the evidence in 3 copies, one on the computer, one on a USB drive, and one in the cloud. I set the cloud storage password to 20 characters, memorized in my head. During that period, Gavin asked me out for meals a bit more often. One night, as we came out of the library, he handed me a cup of warm milk. You've been staying up late writing your thesis, your eyes are all red. I took it and took a sip, the warmth flowing down my throat. Some things are coming to an end. Almost there. He looked at me, the streetlights reflecting 2 small, blurry points of light in his eyes. Lena, I'm not asking what exactly it is. But when you look back, I'll be right there behind you. I smiled, a genuine smile this time. He reached out and tucked my windblown hair behind my ear, his fingertips brushing against my earlobe, leaving a faint warmth. When I returned to the dorm, Serena was breaking my lab equipment. The pipette had fallen to the floor. She bent down to pick it up, and when she looked up and saw me standing at the door, her expression shifted. Sorry, it slipped out of my hand. I took out my phone and scrolled through it, finding a photo of the equipment borrowing record, the equipment number, borrowing time, and return status were all clearly shown. In the photo, the pipette was perfectly intact. It's fine, I said, but the equipment room policy says damages must be compensated. Let me help you fill out the repair form. Serena's face turned pale. No, that's not necessary. I'll handle it myself. Mia walked over, glanced at the photo of the borrowing record on my phone, then looked at the pipette on the floor. She said nothing, took the repair request form from my hand, filled it out, and placed it on Serena's desk. That night, Serena was the first to turn off her light, her face turned toward the wall. Vera whispered to me, this time, she's not even bothering to pretend to cry. I hummed an acknowledgement and saved the photo of the pipette repair request into the equipment damage folder. For Yunchuang Technology's junior year summer internship, Serena and I got in together. Assigned to different project groups, but in the same department. Our desks are separated by a glass wall. Every day when she passes by me, she looks straight ahead, but she'll bump into me in front of the boss, then say in a soft voice, I saw Lena's project progress this week, it's so impressive. I could never do that. The night before the project presentation, the boss suddenly informed me that the plan I was supposed to present would be co-presented by Serena's group. In other words, her team had taken half of my project. At 2 in the morning, I redid the entire plan. I lined up all the data sources, experiment records, and historical emails of iteration versions in chronological order, and turned it into a visual presentation. I synced it to the cloud, kept a USB backup, and locked a hard copy in my desk drawer. On the day of the presentation, Serena stood on stage. When she flipped to a certain slide, she paused, her voice choked with emotion. Actually, the original idea for this project was mine, but Lena and I have a special relationship. Later she took it all. I'm just here to co-present today. Murmurs rippled through the audience. The leader frowned at her, then turned to look at me. I stood up and walked to the front, plugging in my own USB drive. Let me show you in chronological order. The big screen lit up. The project initiation email, I was the sole point of contact. The first draft timestamp, 3 weeks before Serena's team got involved. The raw experimental data logs, 1 report per day for 45 consecutive days, with handwritten notes and signatures in between. The version iteration history, 37 revisions, each with email sending records and modification descriptions. The meeting recordings, all the segments I reported during project meetings. The last page, Serena's email requesting a collaborative presentation, sent yesterday at 5:40 p.m. The recipient was her project lead. Her team had no record of prior involvement whatsoever. The meeting room was so quiet that you could hear the whirring fan of the projector. The boss closed his notebook, his tone flat. That's all for today. Lena, stay behind. Serena stood at the door, not leaving. As I passed her, I saw her nails dig into her palm, leaving 4 white crescent-shaped marks. That evening, I walked out of the office building. Gavin was leaning against a streetlight waiting for me, holding 2 cups of milk tea. When he saw me come out, he walked over in a few steps, asked nothing, and handed me the tea. Let's go, I'm treating you to hot pot. I took the milk tea and noticed a smiley face drawn on the cup with a marker, chubby, with 2 curved lines for eyes. Did you draw this? Yeah. Practiced all afternoon. He looked down at me, the lamplight casting from behind him, his lashes throwing a tiny shadow across his face. Don't know much else, but I'm okay at cheering people up. I laughed through the straw. The streetlight stretched both our shadows long, overlapping, swaying gently. The next day, Serena received a warning from the department. She sat at her desk and sent me a WeChat message. Lena, do you really have to be like this? I didn't reply. I saved the screenshot. First semester of senior year, Serena completely dropped the act. She didn't speak to me in the dorm, but the posts kept coming every day. Sunlight streaming through the dorm window, a lunchbox for one, a desk lamp glowing late into the night, captions always read, it's fine being alone, some people slowly become strangers, grateful for the meetings, grateful for the goodbyes. The comments were full of, hugs, babe and, leave behind whoever makes you unhappy. She also created a group chat, pulling over a dozen girls from the class into it, sharing daily updates that were nothing but one-sided, veiled accusations. When someone left the group, she posted again, crying, I don't even have a place to speak anymore. I paid her no mind. The folder on my computer had already filled up over 4 years, more than 300 WeChat messages, 90 audio recordings, 40-something versions of post screenshots, 70-plus surveillance video clips, 6 handwritten transcripts of third-party testimonies, and 1 comparative report from a senior student. Each file was named in the format, date, event type. Searching for, borrow money, brought up over 20 results, advisor, over a dozen, and equipment, around 8. Neat and orderly, like a chronicle. Mia and Vera had been firmly on my side since sophomore year. Now, after Serena posts something, Mia quietly sends me screenshots, while Vera is more direct, she forwards the content from Serena's group chat to me with a note, save them, don't hold back. The last act of moral blackmail happened on a Wednesday night. The night before the postgraduate recommendation list was announced, Serena sat at the edge of my bed. She hadn't turned on the desk lamp, her whole body sinking into the shadows, her voice very soft but clear, Lena, you have everything. Grades, the recommendation, Gavin. This is my only chance. Can't you just let me have it? I didn't look up from my laptop screen. People who work hard will get what they deserve. I'm begging you. Her voice suddenly softened, taking on the same tone she'd used when asking me for living expenses freshman year. Lena, just this once. I'll never. Serena. I closed my laptop and looked at her. She sat on the edge of my bed, wringing the sheets, her eyes slightly red. For a moment, I saw something real in her. A girl from a small town, living by acting, having performed for 4 years until even she had fooled herself. But I thought of that alley from my past life. When blood blurred my vision, she stood at the back of the crowd with a cold smirk, raising her phone to film my face covered in blood. Fragility and malice are not mutually exclusive. Neither are pity and resentment. The spot isn't mine, and it isn't yours, I said. It belongs to the review committee. Coming to me won't help. She stood up. That trace of fragility on her face vanished, revealing beneath it a hollow, empty calm. Fine. She walked back to her own bed. After she turned around, I opened the monitoring backend. The camera by the door had just updated its firmware, and the night vision mode's clarity had improved again. It started raining outside. Despite October, the weather was still muggy, raindrops smacking against the glass with a crackling sound. I opened the 4-year summary subdirectory in the archive, and the total number of files showed over 300. All right. 7 days before the graduation ceremony, Serena's lengthy essay was posted. The invisible bullying I endured in the dormitory all those years. It was released across 4 platforms simultaneously, the school forum, Weibo, Zaya Hongshu, and WeChat Moments. She accompanied it with a 9-grid picture layout of her being isolated, the empty dorm room, dining alone at a table, her deliberately messed up bed, and a decontextualized screenshot of a chat conversation. My words, we're all roommates, and we should look out for each other, we're cropped to read, let's just respect each other, and interpret it as, on the very first day of school, she told me to get lost. Excellent writing. Emotionally rich. Detailed and thorough. She spent $500 to buy a sense of charity. She recorded audio to threaten me at any time. She took the guy I liked and pretended to be innocent. She plagiarized my thesis direction and published it first. Within 3 hours, readership exceeded 100,000. My WeChat was flooded with private messages, trash, go die, shameless, you suck the blood of the poor. My phone vibrated until it was scorching hot, so I placed it face down on the table. How did I handle this moment in my previous life? I shut myself in the dormitory for 3 days without eating, crying as I explained myself to everyone who cursed me. The more I explained, the more it seemed like an excuse. In the end, I almost didn't get my degree, my job fell through, Gavin left, and Mia and Vera were gradually alienated from me by Serena's campaign of public opinion. In this life, I stood up, poured a glass of water, and drank it slowly. Then I turned on my computer and created a new PPT, response, timeline, evidence. My first reply was posted directly under the original post in the forum. Concise, emotionless. Here's the complete timeline of 4 years. Evidence for each point attached. Please read it all before judging. Page 1, from freshman year to the end. Loan records, financial aid procedures, notes sent, internship material backup timestamps, the cloud venture offer email. 20-something screenshots stamped with a light gray watermark reading, to be continued, without a single unnecessary explanation. The comment section started to shift. Someone posted the full version of that chat record from Serena's long post. The original statement had an extra half sentence, "We're supposed to look out for each other," that she had cut off. Someone dug up that anonymous post from 3 years ago along with my response screenshots. Someone said, "Something's off about this woman." Serena quickly fired off a second post, "They have money and connections, I'm just an ordinary person, I can't fight them." I posted the second round. Plagiarism comparison report, screenshots of Senior Yvonne's testimony, records of advisor conversations, and a timeline comparison of CNKI plagiarism checks. No caption, only one title, Academic Integrity. Public opinion began to avalanche. For the third round, I posted edited surveillance footage. The camera outside the dormitory door, for years of archives. I selected 7 minutes of clips, Serena's face after splashing water on my desk, looking around to make sure no one saw her. Serena's silhouette late at night using my phone to secretly send a message. Later I found out she had texted Gavin, "I don't think we're right for each other." Serena's back as she deliberately knocked over a pipette in the equipment room. Serena's action of taking a photo of my thesis draft and then deleting the record. 7 minutes of silence, without any narration or background music. But anyone could understand. The fourth round was Evan's voice message. In the first semester of his senior year, he finally had a falling out with Serena and took the initiative to contact me. The voice message contained the timeline he personally recounted. "In my junior year, Serena asked me to fabricate testimony about Lena's misconduct. I almost did it. Here are the chat records." The fifth round involved 4 professors from the department jointly issuing an open letter, confirming that Serena's thesis involved academic misconduct and that an investigation had been launched. The sixth round consisted of spontaneous posts from classmates. Mia wrote, "The 4 years I saw," Vera wrote, "Some people don't deserve sympathy," and more than a dozen girls who had been pulled into the tree hole group by Serena shared screenshots of group chats. It turned out that Serena had told different versions of being bullied to different people, with contradictory content and timelines that didn't align. It took only 7 days for the long post to simmer and explode across the internet. On the 8th day, the school's official website announced, Serena's master's degree qualification revoked, published papers retracted, and a disciplinary demerit recorded. The 9th day. In the dormitory hallway. Serena was crouched by our dorm door, crying, her suitcase lying open beside her with clothes stuffed in haphazardly. She lifted her head, tears carving streaks through her foundation, revealing reddened skin beneath. She reached out and grabbed my pant leg, gripping tightly. "Lena, why did you do this to me? I was so good to you when we first started freshman year. I've always treated you as my best friend." I looked down at her, and suddenly I couldn't help but laugh out loud. For years. She crouches on the floor, looking up at me, in the exact same spot, at the exact same angle as 4 years ago. But back then, she was standing in the sunlight, dragging a battered suitcase, saying, "Lena, take care of me." Now, under the dim hallway light, she grips my pant leg, tears streaming past the tip of her nose and dripping onto the ground. I crouch down to her eye level. In her pupils, I see my own face, calm, expressionless. "Because in the last life," I say, "I already died once." She freezes, her pupils dilating slightly, as if she didn't understand the Chinese. I didn't explain further. I stood up and left. At the end of the hallway was a window, sunlight streaming in from outside, casting a golden strip across the floor. Gavin stood in the light waiting for me, holding 2 graduation ceremony tickets in his hand. Mia and Vera caught up from behind. Mia's eyes were reddened but she was smiling, and Vera was unusually without her headphones, her hair loose. "Let's go, we're going to be late." Gavin handed me one of the tickets, his fingertip brushing across the back of my hand, warm. The graduation ceremony was held in the gymnasium. I stood on stage in my cap and gown, and as I received my diploma, applause erupted from the audience below. Mia down below made a heart shape with her hands, and Vera, expressionless, held up her phone and recorded the entire process. Sunlight streamed down from the dome skylight, falling upon the golden characters of the certificate, making them glisten. I took a light breath. Outside the gymnasium, the flame trees were in full bloom, their red so dazzling it stung the eyes. I squinted at that patch of red, recalling the ceiling I had seen the moment I opened my eyes 4 years ago when I was reborn, the dormitory carrying the scent of disinfectant, and those words, "Lena, take good care of me." Back then, I thought 4 years would be long. Looking back, it was nothing more than walking from one alley to another, climbing up from a pool of blood to stand under the sunlight. Gavin gently squeezed my hand from behind, his warmth seeping through, soft and comforting. "Come on," he said, "let's go home." I smiled faintly and followed him into the light of late June. Behind us, the gymnasium was still playing the graduation song, the intro just starting to ring out.